This is the New York Police Department's Bomb Squad. Part human,
we'll find it.
Part dog, part robot, all one team.
Lethal and indiscriminate. To disarm one is to save countless lives.
NYPD Bomb Squad has given the all clear.
One reason the members of the oldest and biggest bomb squad in the United States are unique.
Bomb Squad was able to safely remove a device.
When you don't see them, the NYPD Bomb Squad is always watching for that unsuspecting threat.
NYPD Bomb Squad racing in, then hauling away another suspicious package.
Package has been properly identified.
You're listening to Tales from the Boom Room, profiles of the NYPD's arson, explosion, and bomb squad. Back when I was in the process of divvying up different miniseries for this program, that was the first one, Tales from the Boom Room. Before anything else, before the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit, certainly before The Best of the Bravest, which chronicles retired members of the FDNY, or Talk to Me, Life on the NYPD's Hostage Negotiation Team, we had this miniseries, Tales from the Boom Room. And tonight's Volume 34. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Mike the New Haven podcast, episode 246. If you have not checked out the previous episode, that was 245, with the current Chief of Safety for the New York City Fire Department, Frank Lieb, who I was able to interview for Volume 37 of the Best of the Bravest interviews with the FDNY's elite. Frank's been on the job with the FDNY since 1992, was a charter member of their Special Operations Command, and really just a very insightful guy who still loves what he does, 31 years into it with the New York City Fire Department. So a couple of FDNY shows under the belt now back to the NYPD tonight for, like I said, Volume 34 of Tales from the Boom Room. I'll introduce my guest in a moment, but we're still getting used to the fact that we monetize this bad boy now. So we're going to go through the sponsors, and first things first, my consulting company. Need advice on how to start your podcast? Frustrated with the editing process? Can't find a voiceover guy? Hi, I'm Mike Colón, and I'm here to help. I'm the owner and founder of MC Media Editing Services, your premier consulting company for all things media, where I can offer you consulting advice on how to get started, and once you get started, editing, as well as voiceover work, all for a very reasonable price. If you want to reach me, you can contact me at 917-781-6189 or the email that you see listed here. I'm always available, and I'm always willing to help. Again, 917-781-6189. Why go to some giant consulting firm that's going to charge you an arm and a leg when you can just come to me? If you want to be stress-free, the way to go is to call MC. MC Media Editing Services, your premier consulting company. And that certainly got me busy. Now for the next ad of the three that we have before we get to our guest tonight, Mr. Bill Ryan, the co-executive producer and creator of this miniseries, Tales from the Boom Room. The Mike the New Haven podcast is proudly sponsored and supported by the Ryan Investigative Group. If you need an elite PI, look no further than the elite Ryan Investigative Group, which is run by retired NYPD detective Bill Ryan, a 20-year veteran of the department who served the majority of his career in the Detective Bureau, most notably in the Arson Explosion Squad. So if you need a PI to handle anything from fraud, legal services, and anything else that you might require, contact Bill at 347-417-1610. Again, 347-417-1610. Reach him at his website or the email that you see here. Again, if you need a PI, look no further than Bill Ryan and the Ryan Investigative Group, a proud supporter and sponsor of the Mike to New Haven podcast. One more, and that is Joe Murray. If you're ever caught on the wrong end of the law, call Joe Murray. Joe's a retired NYPD police officer turned criminal defense attorney. With 15 years of experience in the NYPD from 1987 until 2002, he parlayed a successful career in the NYPD into an equally successful career as a criminal defense attorney. His website is jmurray-law.com, where you can reach him at 646-838-1702, or just email him at joe@jmurray-law.com. All right, sponsorships. Thank you very much to those individuals. That's out of the way now. Now we get to my next guest, who for 28 years experienced the happenings of housing, extraordinary of emergency service, and lastly, the bustlings of the bomb squad as a member of both the New York City Housing Police and, of course, the NYPD upon the 1995 merger of both departments. An emergency rescue cop in housing, he got to take in the galore of Truck 4 upon the aforementioned merger in 1995. And with 16 years on the job, by the spring of 2002, a quieter transition was simply not an option. And so as a proud and unabashed member of the Knucklehead Nine, as Jim Carano once christened them here on the Mike the New Haven podcast, he helped rejuvenate a unit depleted by both the wave of retirements and the tragic line of duty loss of one of their own, Detective Claude Richards, at the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001. And that, for this Volume 34 of Tales from the Boom Room, profiles the NYPD's arson, explosion, and bomb squad. Is a man I've been trying to get on the show for a long time, and finally tonight we link up, and that is Mr. Steve Lanoce. Welcome.
How you doing?
How are you? Good to
All right,
see
what's
you.
going on?
Doing all right. Doing all right. So before we get into everything surrounding your career, I'll start you off with the question I ask everyone, and that, of course, is where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Bronx, various places: Pelham Parkway, Crotona Parkway, Westchester Square, Throgs Neck, Pelham Bay. Bounced around a lot. Uh, grew up as, I guess, as normal a kid as possible. My mother was a war bride, actually.
Mm.
My father met her during World War II in Germany. I guess they fell in love. He came back after the war and sent for her and came over and end up getting married. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool thing to have a war bride as a mom.
I imagine. So Lanoce, is that, so that's a little bit of German. What's your ancestry there?
No, Lanoce is Italian. That's
Okay.
my father's side of the family was Sicilian.
Okay.
My mother's side was obviously German.
Okay. We had a paisan here tonight. Good to see everybody in the chat. And if you got a super chat, fire away, and I'll make sure I get to it at the appropriate time. If I don't shout you out, it's not because I meant to miss you. It's just, there's a lot of you in the chat. And I see somebody that just tuned in tonight. I know this guy, Billy Kennedy. He's here. And
hey,
he's watching.
what's up, Billy?
Good to see you, Billy. And check out his business, which is North Star Crisis Management. It's a little free plug for you there, Billy. He does great work with that. Darren Phillips, I see you. Jay Driscoll, Pylon Blue, I see you. That's my boy Kevin. And Dawn Marie, I see you as well. So when did you first know that you wanted to be a cop, or were you the kind of guy that took all the civil service test?
No, you know what? I went to school. I went to Bronx High School of Science, which that's a whole story down the road. But went to Queens College. Didn't do so great, with what didn't have any sort of focus. Ended up getting my EMT license and working on an ambulance. I started in the privates, and then I worked for EMS. And I was enjoying it, having a great time. Loved being out on the street. Didn't want to be behind a desk. I had a couple jobs where I was behind a desk, and loved being out on the road. And I remember one night having a job and ended up in Montefiore Hospital in the Bronx. And Chief Scanlon, who I guess he was there for an EDP or hospitalized prison or something. I don't think he was chief back then. He was lieutenant or captain. Mm-hmm. We just started BSing. And he basically goes, why don't you come join our team? You'd have a lot of fun here too. And made me think about it. And I said, all right, listen, let me give it a shot. And took the civil service test and did pretty well. The rest is history. Right.
Did you care which department you went to, or did you have a preference?
Did I care? I didn't know what housing was.
Yeah.
I took the police test, the NYPD police test.
Uh-huh.
I still remember to this day going down and to get whether it be not being sworn in, but getting your paperwork to get sworn in. Somewhere down Broadway, down Lower Manhattan, and everybody, all the newbies are lined up outside with their test scores and all the paperwork and everything like that. I'm waiting online, and you get up to the front of the desk, and people in front of you. What's your name? What's your number? Okay, they shook their hand. Welcome to the NYPD. That would go on 3 or 4 times, and then they got to me. What's your name? Oh, Lanoce. Lanoce. Yeah, go up to the 8th floor. And I said, well, where's my handshake? Where's my welcome to the NYPD? He goes, you'll get it upstairs. So, all right, I'll get it upstairs. I go up to the 8th floor or whatever floor it was and walk through the doors and walked up to the desk. And the guy said, oh, welcome to the New York City Housing Authority Police Department. I'm like, what? I go, what is that? He goes, nah, you'll love it. You'll love it. Just sign here and get out. And that was basically the introduction. It's like, okay.
Right.
And that was interesting.
Of course. And I've had that discussion with so many guys that didn't start with the NYPD, started elsewhere prior to the merger. I remember the conversation I had with John Bushing. It was something similar. He started out with transit, as you know, where I was like, same question. What was your reaction? He was like, pretty much, oh, no.
It was actually a guy who transit and housing both had desks in that room on the 8th floor, whatever floor it was. And I remember one guy walking up to the transit desk and they said, welcome to New York City Transit Authority Police Department. And the guy was like, absolutely not. And it's like, he threw the paperwork at him, turned around, walked right out. Like, nope, no, I'm done.
Wow.
I'm not going to deal with it. it was. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what housing was really.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, it was. Didn't live near a project or in the project, so.
I was gonna say, yeah, unless you grew up in the projects, nobody really knew who they were.
I mean, my grandmother actually lived in the housing projects in the Bronx, over on the other side of the Bronx, and she lived there till the day she died. And didn't think anything of it. It's just a big building, a lot of apartments. Went in there, never saw the police. Never had any problems, any issues. But this was, back in the 70s. During the day, no problem.
Right. Yeah. At night is when you probably have some issues, but during the day, at least back then,
yeah,
not so much. Not so much. This is volume 34 of Tales from the Boom Room, profiles of the NYPD's arson, explosion, and bomb squad. Our guest tonight is retired NYPD bomb squad detective and former emergency service unit cop Steve Lanoce. I see Pete Prenzo in the chat, retired street crime lieutenant and author as well. And Stu Kelsall is watching from across the pond in England, where it's just after midnight. So Stu's up late for me, and I appreciate that. So
he's having a cocktail?
I hope he is. It's a Friday night. It's a Friday night.
Go.
So there you go. It's happy hour somewhere. So with that being said, sorry, what was that?
He's having a pint.
He is indeed having a pint. I'm sure he is. Stu's a good guy. So, that being said, and I remember having this conversation with Jimmy Shanahan when he was on, and that the mid 80s, yeah, great guy. The mid 80s really represented a positive change in the housing police, to where their reputation as workers really became cemented during that time. It was a rocking time in the city. Crime was through the roof, and that's where people really found out, oh wow, we got a group of guys and gals here in the housing projects that even if crime is through the roof, they're working hard, they're tough, they're doing the verticals, they're handling a lot of the assignments that unfortunately most cops don't want to handle, understandably so, because they're quite daunting, and they're doing it with less. So coming in during that time where you're quite literally doing more with less. Before I get to who trained you and things of that nature, where was your first PSA?
PSA 7.
Which is where for my audience?
It's in the South Bronx.
Okay.
153 in between Morris and Cortlandt Avenue.
Okay. All right. So South Bronx.
The garden spot of the South Bronx.
South Bronx during the mid 80s. Again, rocking. You're handling jobs with what, 2 or 3 sector cars in the region? Maybe 4 on a good day?
You covered, I believe, if I remember correctly, there were 3 sector cars in the lower half of the PSA and 3 sector cars in the north half. And you were covering the 4.0, the 4.1, part of the 4.1, the 4.2, the 4.4, the 4.6, and part of the 4.8. So to this day, guys that I've worked with have always razzed me, no housing available. Where's the housing? No, they're in the record rooms. I'm like, I never saw a record room. The record rooms were like closing down as we sort of got in.
Right.
It was just, it was annoying because, you'd have 3 cars covering basically 3 precincts. And it's like you get job after job after job. And it's like we're holding 3, we're holding 4, jobs. And it's like, how do you do that? How do you handle all those jobs? And eventually, the guys in the 4.0, the 4.1, the 4.2 have to pick up our slack. It's not necessarily slack. It's, we just don't have.
You're busy. Yeah, you're busy. You're tied up with.
No, it was good. Trial by fire. That was it. I mean, it's just they threw you in. It's like, okay, after your field training, it's like, get out. You get in the back of a car, they drop you off, they bring you up to a project. I remember my first night was Webster, Claremont Village, which is Webster houses, Morris houses, forget the other one, but it was like Webster Avenue, 168 to 171. There were like 30 buildings. And the old timers were like, all right, kid, get out. These are yours.
Right. I mean, my goodness.
Basically, it's like you go inside a building, make sure you know what number you're in before you go in.
In case you got to put over 1013.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, my goodness. That was, in that first year, 86, James Holmes got killed off duty in a robbery. I don't know if you got on before or after his murder, but did you go to his funeral at all, or did the guys talk about him at all?
No, you know what? I was probably in the academy, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they sort of keep you, away from the goings on of what's going on the street at that point. It's like, So honestly, I don't remember that. Mm-hmm. I do remember attending a whole slew of funerals, and actually, today is the 25th anniversary of my first partner, Gary Pico, getting killed.
Right. That was in a car accident.
25 years ago today. I actually got a call this morning from Donald Plunkett, who was a cop that was actually working with him that night. Gary just switched to midnights, to take care of he had 2 twin girls. So it's like, him and his wife and working. And so he switched to steady midnight so he could take care of the girls when he got home in the morning. And that was like his third tour, third midnight. And Plunkett was a newer guy. And I guess he got stuck on midnights at that point. So they partnered up for that night, and horrible.
Yeah. Gary Pico, for my audience that may not be familiar with him, he was a police officer with the housing police. I believe he was responding, and Steve, correct me if I don't have all the details correct here. I think it was a call of shots fired, and they were responding. And did they get clipped by? No, that was a different call. But he got into a car accident, unfortunately, on the job. I'm thinking about Joe Alcamo, which is a separate accident, separate tragedy. And unfortunately, Steve succumbed to his injury sustained in that car accident. Line of duty, or Gary, succumbed to his injuries in that accident. That was 1988, June 16th of 1988.
June 16th, 88. Yeah, it started out as a robbery, a gunpoint robbery in the 5-2. Yeah. And then there was a car chase, and I guess the perps crashed their car. And they started shooting it out with the cops who were chasing them. And they backed up, and they backed away. I guess they backed away from their car, and then the perps jumped into the marked patrol car, the RMP, and they took off, and they started driving crazy throughout the Bronx, shooting out the windows, shooting at everybody. And, Gary was responding to that. And, there was a horrible accident where an ambulance was also responding, thinking that there was somebody shot. And,
so that is the call I was talking about, because I think the ambulance clipped the patrol car, if I remember correctly,
yes.
And that ended up causing that fatal accident.
Grand Concourse and Mount Eden. He was ejected from the car from one side of the Grand Concourse and ended up on the other. I mean, that's how much of an accident it was that night.
Well, I don't know how long. It's very sad, and I don't know how long you got the chance to work with Gary, but in the time that you did, tell me about some of the key lessons he taught you early on for a young guy coming on the job.
Well, I mean, Gary was he was the type of cop you never had to turn around. He was always there. He had your back. Great instructor, great with people. Just loved everyone. I mean, he was a part-time minister in his church. So it's kind of weird. It's like, you 1 minute you're putting on a uniform, locking people up and kicking butt if necessary, and on the other hand, you're preaching and in church and doing your thing there. So it's the duality of life for him. But he's just a great all around guy, sweetheart. I mean, 6'5", probably pushing almost 300 pounds, which he made sure I put on a lot of weight. Every night we'd go out and get all the Spanish food in the South Bronx, and I probably packed down around 30 pounds within the first year. But it was a lot of fun. It was a great learning experience, and I was with him well over a year.
Okay.
Basically, once I got out of field training, I did 6 months, 8 months on foot posts, and a spot opened up, and he's like, "You want to be partners?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely, let's go."
Do you remember
a lot of great?
Sorry, there's a bit of a delay there. Didn't mean to cut you off. Gary Pico, certainly not forgotten, great cop, and I'm glad that you were able to speak of him. Volume 34 of Tales from the Boom Room. Like I said, our guest tonight, retired NYPD bomb squad detective Steve Lanoce. Do you remember your first collar?
First collar, probably a Discon resisting. It was on a midnight. We worked the 9 squad chart, so it was like you did day tour at 4 to 12, day tour 4 to 12, and then midnight, and working midnight. And I'm still this rookie, got this whole rookie mentality. It's like I got the uniform on, I got a shield, I got a gun, I got a hat, I got all this, my little bat belt going. People are going to listen to me. If I give them a direct order, they're going to listen and tell. It's like, okay, that's not what happens. And I learned that really quick. It was some drunk idiot that was banging on his girlfriend's door. It was like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and he just wouldn't stop. And the whole family, it was very violently banging on the door. And we get called, we respond, and we're like, guy, you got to leave. And he's just cursing back and forth, and he didn't want to leave, and then he just basically came at me to swing at me. And, Gary being a good partner, and me being a stupid rookie, not knowing what the hell's going on, he just sort of pushed me out of the way, knocked him down, and I jumped on top of him, and, we were able to cuff him. And that was pretty much the first introduction. It's like, yeah, it doesn't matter if you have a gun, shield, or whatever, they're not going to listen to you,
Right.
for the most part.
Right. You know what? And that's especially when you involve things like alcohol or any kind of drugs. And just the hard-headedness of Hispanic men, myself being included in that category.
Yeah.
That's a lethal combination. But at least you're able to get the guy without incident,
Yeah. It was, it wasn't a big deal. It was just, at that point, it's just like, all right, get him in and start some paperwork, and, the lovely world of fingerprinting and paperwork and all the other great stuff. You spend more time in the system sometimes than they did.
Right. It's true.
It's horrible. It's a gun collar. Once we get called for a male just stole a TV out of somebody's apartment. So we drive around the area. All of a sudden, we see this guy walking, with a TV on his shoulder. It's not huge TV on his shoulder, like 11, 12 o'clock at night. And we go to stop him. He resists. He's reaching into his pocket. We grab him, and we could feel that there's a gun inside his pocket. So, wrestle him down to the ground, get the gun out without incident. Long story short, it's like I'm in the system for 30 something hours doing paperwork and waiting for the DA and doing all, and he's already out. And I was like, very, very frustrating.
Right.
That's the tough part of the job.
Yeah, still is. All these years later, I've always wondered, and I don't know the inner logistics, but I'm like, with modern technology being what it is there a certain aspect of paperwork an officer has to do? Yes, I'm sure, because you need a firsthand account. But as far as the rest of it, I've always wondered, can't they just hire administrative clerks to handle that part and pay them a salary, and that way you can put the cop out on the street quicker?
Book them, Dano, and just hand them off to somebody else, and that's it.
If there was
Danos, why you buy them?
I wish it was that way, honestly.
Yeah, listen, it'd be great. You know what? That was actually being in emergency and like being part of the A team, the apprehension team. All you did was search warrants. And there's some days we do anywhere from 6 to 8 warrants on a good day. And, obviously you're going in, you're taking custody of everybody, and then you're just passing them off to the precinct, and they're doing all the paperwork. So, that was actually nice. It's like, okay, we get to do the fun part, and then it's like, okay, here you go. They're yours. We're leaving. We have to go to the next precinct, next job, next warrant, which was good.
Oh yeah. It was running, quite literally running gun during those days. And the A team still does a lot of great work to this day. One thing I did want to ask you about in regards to housing was, and this is something that's been brought up quite a bit on this show too, but I wanted to get your perspective, is that a lot of people, not just in New York, but throughout the country, when it comes to police departments and community relations, talk about, community policing. Well, you guys pretty much invented it in the housing police, because you had no choice. Your beat was the projects, and you wanted to get to know everyone in there. And as has come up many a time, not just the bad guys you had to keep an eye on and eventually arrest, but the many good people that lived there, kept the raised their family there. So tell me about, and that, that was a very rewarding part of the job to counter all the frustrations. Tell me about community policing and what that meant to you back then.
Well, they had something called PCOs, Project Community Officers, which basically it's like, all right, Morris houses, that's yours. Morrison Air Rights, that's yours. St. Mary's projects, those are yours. And one guy would work a certain set of tours, and that was his post. And you definitely learned who the good people were, who the bad people were, who belonged there, who didn't belong there. And it's just, it was nice. I personally, because of what happened with Gary and you were sort of getting taken out of the picture for a little while, I didn't experience that as much as I could have. But I did, on occasion, you repeat jobs in the same area and you see a lot of the same people, and hey, how you doing? What's going on? It was nice. It's nice to be recognized for good, by good people for good things, and they're very thankful for you to be there. Then you got to know the idiots, and it's like, okay, he's up to no good tonight. You knew.
Right.
Or somebody just didn't belong, or somebody, definitely didn't live there.
Yeah.
You
You
know?
never feel like you know everything as a patrol cop or any other unit that you may go to in the police department. The second that you feel that way is probably when you should leave, because you're going to get yourself hurt or somebody else. But what was the moment early on in your career, pre-emergency rescue, pre-emergency service, where you felt, okay, I have my footing under me. I feel like I got a good head on my shoulders. I'm starting to get a feel for the job.
Yeah, I mean, basically, when you're out there and you feel comfortable going on all these jobs, and we had a whole group of guys that came in, and we were all hungry and young and full of piss and vinegar, and we just wanted to get involved in everything. It's like, if we had adjoining foot posts, this is your side of the block, this is my side of the block, and we got another guy on this side, and but they're all relatively close, obviously within walking distance. You get one guy bringing binoculars, he'd go up on the roof and he'd start looking for the drug dealers, and the second guy would go hide in the back door of the building to keep them from running out of the back, and then the third guy would come up, and then you'd call the senior guys that were in the patrol car, and they would come up, and it was great. You felt like you were in the hunt,
Right.
and you sort of learned what you were doing at that point, and you learned how to become a cop.
Right. No, and that's why so many people have said, and this is the beauty of having a smaller police department. Granted, the NYPD being as large as it is, even now with the exodus that's having, it's still a fairly large police department. You have more resources, there's more at your disposal, and that's nice too. Don't get me wrong, this has been talked about many a time on the show. But the beauty of a smaller police department, as we saw with transit and as we saw with housing, was it was easier to make connections like that, like we talked about with the community, and it was easier to be out on the street and get a feel for who was who, as you mentioned, to go out there and make those fruitful collars, to where that's why many have said from either side, transit and housing, once they got the feel for it, that it was the best kept secret.
Yeah. I mean, it was. I mean, you took a lot of ribbing, and you got to be friends with a lot of the NYPD guys that were giving you backup, and we did the same thing. It's like, if we had nothing going on and they were on a heavy call, we'd run and back them up, and then it was appreciated by some were idiots regardless of what, but that's the name that that's part of life.
Right.
Good people are gonna have idiots, but I mean, it was nice, but every once in a while you had to deal with, oh, hey, here's the pumpkin car, the orange and blue,
Right.
dressed up for pumpkin for Halloween. No housing, and then just the no housing available all the time. It's just some guys would just rib you just to bust your chops, but some were just adamantly angry. It's like, why do I have to come and deal with this? Well, because you have 100 people and we have 5. Sorry, pal.
Them's the breaks.
It is what it is.
No, of course. And I got to say, Jerry Kozlowskis and I talked about it. People used to call, when you guys had those RMPs, people used to call you guys the Mets police.
Oh, Mets police, the pumpkin police, the no housing, no available police.
Yeah.
It is what it is. You learn to get thick skin, and it's like, okay, it is what it is. It's like, okay, well, while you're out there and you got your quote unquote quota, not a quota, but you have to write your summonses.
Right.
Part of your deal. We didn't. They actually frowned upon that. It's like, they're like, don't do car stops, and don't get involved if you don't have to. It's like, stick to the buildings, and you have enough work there.
Right.
Which is nice.
Yeah, no, it's true. That's true. I like when you guys made the switch to it was more of a white, the white, orange, and blue RMPs.
Yeah. It was
a really nice looking vehicle.
Yes, can't complain.
No.
As long as I was in a car, it didn't matter what color it was. At that point, after walking foot posts through all types of weather, and you crawl into a building to get warm, or it's no air conditioning in the building, so it's summertime, you just sort of sucked it up.
Yep.
But wintertime, it's like, go in there, you're freezing your butt off. It's like, I'll take a green car, a blue car, a purple car, an orange car. I'll take a Fiat. It's a Pinto. I'll drive a Pinto. It doesn't matter.
No, those tri-state winters are brutal, and me living in Connecticut my whole life, believe me, I feel your pain. It's just as bad here.
Now.
Yeah, I know, and I hate you for that. How dare you? I have to, down the road. This is a quick aside. as anybody that knows me knows, I don't know how much more Connecticut winters I have left in me. As soon as I get the money, I'm going down to Florida. I just hate it. It's
Well, now
just
you're going
brutal.
full extreme. Yeah, you're going down. You know, you're going from Connecticut and brutal and cold and rough winters, and then you go to Florida with zero change of, you know, of venue, so to speak, with the weather.
I'm Dominican.
It's hot.
That's what I'm used to.
Yeah, but still, I listen. Dominican or South African or middle Africa, it's still hot.
It
I
is.
mean, humid, hot. But what
Yeah,
I like it where I am in North Carolina. It's like, you know,
Oh, Carolina's nice too.
you get a little bit of both.
Yeah, no,
You know, a little bit of
Carolina's nice
winter, a
too.
little bit of summer. You know, not too extreme, and you don't get those cold, brutal winters.
Yeah, listen, Carolinas are nice. I don't knock you for that. I might go down there too someday. It depends.
Yeah.
Once I accrue the necessary finances for that. I wanted to touch on this. So I think it's around 92, 93. I know the unit itself was launched on New Year's Eve 93 because that's what Steph told me. But there was talk of forming a rescue unit. I remember Latanzio telling me that after he did that great job with his partner where they rescued some people from a housing fire, that one of the guys went up to him. It might have been DeForest Taylor, but don't hold me to that. Visiting John in the hospital. Hey, we're thinking about starting up our own ESU. Would you be interested? So push came to shove, and boom, housing rescue got off the ground. By this point, Transit had long already had the emergency medical rescue unit that started in 77. ESU had been in existence since the 1930 by that point, so 62, 63 years. How did the opportunity for you to get into ERU come about?
Emergency housing rescue.
Yeah, ERU.
Well, basically after, after Gary died, I was pretty messed up in the head, and the CO of PSA 7 was like, we put him inside for a little while, take him off the street, so, just to cool as jets, cool as heels, because I was hot. I was furious. I wanted blood. So it took me off for a little while, and then one of the captains there, Mike Facito, his driver had retired, so he's like, "Listen," he goes, "Would you like to drive me for a little while?" And I'm like, "I guess." What do I do? He goes, "We go to different parts of the city and hit different commands, and I like going on jobs, so we go on jobs too, depending on where we are." And he loved it. He was a captain that was a cop at heart, Mike Facito. To this day, we're still in contact. So I worked with him for a while, and I then did well, got to know him, got to know the CEO, and positions opened up, and he said, "Would you like to apply to put in for it? You have qualifications. You were an EMT before. That's definitely helpful. You're pretty sharp, pretty sharp, I guess." And, I just put in for it, and I was lucky enough to get selected.
How many was it? Like 44?
I couldn't give you an exact number, but yeah, there's probably between 30 and 40.
Okay, so the thing about
counting cops, I don't know about counting cops, bosses, sergeants, lieutenants.
Oh yeah, that might add a little bit more to the total, bring it up to about 50 or so, maybe, depending on how many of them were in there. The thing that Guerra mentioned to me when he was on was that the beauty of housing rescue was that there was a lot of time to do training because of the federal accreditation. So you could take certain courses that a department that did not have that accreditation could not take. So you got the full, rundown on everything there was. Building collapse, even explosions, bombs. The bomb squad gave you some rundown, a little bit of foreshadowing, right? So going through that training.
Dodge.
Yep. Another great one. Tell me about that. What were the sections of the training prior to the unit officially getting launched on New Year's Eve of 93 that you most enjoyed?
Well, I mean, there were many aspects to the training. A big portion of it was transit EMRU, right? Transit ESU. And they were very helpful, and they gave guys time to do some training and get us sort of rolling. So we did a lot of training with them. We did training with Yonkers ESU. We did a little training with FD. We did a little training with the bomb squad. DEP, we did some training with them. I mean, any sort of training that was available, let's take it. We'll go. We'll do it. I think I'm trying to think. Connecticut State Police, we did something with them.
Hey,
just we did an indoor post blast up in Connecticut, Mohegan Sun, just outside of Mohegan Sun. That was great. But yeah, training was excellent. They gave us a lot of opportunities, and then finally, just before, the merge was going to happen, then we ended up going to STS, the ESU school, Specialized Training School, and that was wonderful. That was top notch, and that really just put us over the edge. So it was good. We I think we came in with a good knowledge of what needed to be done and what to do.
Right. Talking with Steve Lanoce, Volume 34, Tales from the Boom Room. Hi, Maui Swift. I see you in the chat. The prettiest Canadian blonde I've ever seen. Maui, you make me want to hop on a flight and head down to British Columbia. She's a big supporter of this show, and you are aging like fine wine, my friend. Good to see you, as always. I wasn't around long. It was only around 8 months as a standalone unit before the absorption, because you guys weren't merged as a whole department quite yet. That came in 95. But the unit was operating on loan for a while, which I'll touch on in a second. But those 8 months prior to being on loan to ESU, was there any notable jobs you can recall from that period responding to?
Prior to merging into ESU?
Yeah.
Any notable jobs? We did a lot of elevated jobs. We did a couple, pin jobs, which at that point, a lot of the ESU guys were not happy. They're like, I remember one instance where we're traveling from Upper Manhattan to Lower Manhattan on the FDR Drive, and going to a different PSA to cover that area for the night. And there was a pin job on the FDR, and we had the Hearst tools and we had all the equipment, so we started doing what we had to do. And then the guys from the truck down there showed up, and they were not happy with us. They're like, "Why are you stealing our jobs?" I'm like, "We didn't steal your jobs. We couldn't drive by the job." So it was tough. There was a lot of growing pains.
Right.
Dealing with that in the beginning, it was, and I feel it from both ends. We got our training and we had our thing going, and we handle our jobs, and then it was sort of like pushed into, the mommy unit, big issue, and some guys were just not happy, and some guys in housing were not happy, and it's like, push comes to shove, it's like, hey, listen, it's above us. We're not the ones making this the final call. But it all worked out. But as far as specific jobs, nothing rings a bell. Roger Mack, going out with him, and just a ton of elevator jobs that was constant.
Yeah.
That just day in and day out. Who's stuck? Who's having an asthma attack? Who's sick? Who's passed out? There's no air conditioning. Who can't breathe? And stressful. Trying to get them out as they're banging and screaming, and okay, let's go.
And all you guys had was the REPs. You didn't have the big ESU trucks, so that kind of made it complicated too. You can only carry those REPs are very useful. Don't get me wrong, but you can only carry but so much.
Yes, we had good equipment.
Yeah.
But we didn't have the long guns, so we had the bunkers, and we had our sidearms. That was it. Just regular pistol and a bunker. So if you had heavy duty perp jobs, you stepped into the back of the line. Which as it should be.
No, that makes sense.
But we did get a lot of good equipment. A lot of federal money was sort of funneled into the program. So we got all, good stuff, good, Hearst tools and the saws and hydraulic tools and hand tools and stuff like that, lighting. It was great. It's like all brandy dandy new.
Yeah, and I think with the federal guidelines, Scotty Wagner was telling me this, that the thing that the feds required was you have to use it. We'll only take it away from you if we know you're not using it. If you're using it, hey, have at it. We don't need to know anything. And that, that incentivized the department to go even further. And I feel like the department by 1995, when the merge happened, was really on the cusp of something great. And we'll never know what that great was, unfortunately, because the merge did happen, and the merge did produce some positive results, as has been covered many a time on this program. But I would have liked to have seen housing, even if the merger still had to happen down the road, move into the 21st century, because it was a police department that was really, in many respects, way ahead of its time. in hindsight, way ahead of its time.
Mm-hmm.
It was a modern police department.
Yes, I mean it was definitely nice to be in that scenario, in that situation, and the merge happened, and it was like it's just the merging of the superpowers. Us being the smaller one, obviously, but
Yeah.
it was great. It was I loved every minute of it. Loved the STS school. Can't think of anything I would rather do again, to go through STS and climb the Brooklyn Bridge, climb the Verrazano Bridge. The only thing I wouldn't want to do was go scuba dive. That was the worst part of it, scuba diving. At night in Jamaica Bay, pitch black. Jamaica Bay is not like Jamaica. We can let's go see the fishes. No, there's no fishes there. Can't see anything. Pitch black, big spotlight underneath. Searching. Doing a search and recovery for a mannequin. And it was torturous, absolutely torturous. You're down there, you can't see anything. You got these horseshoe crabs crawling over you. Yeah, not fun.
Unless your name's Ken Winkler.
Yeah.
He was the only one. I mean, he loved that. If you tell that to Kenny Winkler, don't threaten him with a good time. He loved the scuba dive.
I'd love to scuba dive, but send me to Jamaica, the Bahamas, Grenada, someplace like that,
Right. Right.
Not Jamaica Bay, not the Hudson River, not the East River.
Ugh.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you might.
You're in a wetsuit, or excuse me, you're in a dry suit, which you might as well be a wetsuit, because you come out, you'd have so many holes in it, and it's like all of a sudden you got leaks here, leaks there. It's like, oh, this is great. This, run me through a car wash now. Clean me up after this.
Before I get to truck 4, because of course the merge happens, you guys were on loan for a little bit. I'll touch on that. Steph wanted me to ask you this, and this is what
I could just imagine. Steffi, what do you want to ask me? No.
So when I put the promo out on Facebook, he commented this, and he says, first 2 things. One, about your bee sting finger.
Okay, hey, see, before you even asked me, I put the fingers up. I don't know. It was a bee sting. I don't know. We were handling a job. I don't know if it was the A team or doing a warrant or something like that. And it's an enclosed situation. And I got stung on my finger. Just the damn thing is like started swelling up. And I'm like, look, this hurts. And he just never let me live that down to this day. And this is 20 plus years ago. I knew. So before you even asked me the question, that's why I put my fingers up. Like I knew he was going to bring that up, but that's all right. It's all good.
And the other thing was when your life flashed before your eyes, when your back tightened up.
Oh, we were fighting an EDP. He's somewhere up in the Bronx, and he made fun of me because like Anita Rosado, who was a great woman.
I love her.
It's like, I don't know if you know or you've heard about Anita. She's
I know Anita. She'll come on the show later in the summer.
One tough girl, let me tell you. The first time I worked with her, we did a pin job or something, and we'd get in the Hearst tool back in the back of the truck, and I'm like, I'm just trying to be nice. It's like, male, female doesn't matter. We're both cops, but let me lift the heavy stuff. And she's like, no, I got it. One hand just through the REP. I'm like, holy crap. I said, okay, it's good to go. But yeah, so yeah, we were fighting an EDP in some place up in the Bronx, and just my back just totally gave out. You ever get a really bad cramp?
Yep.
And it's just like no matter what you do, and it's just the more you fight it, the more it tightens up. And yeah, maybe I over exaggerated a little bit, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to live that down either. Thanks, Steph. Appreciate it.
So we covered the basis on that one. And to your point about Anita, I met Anita down at Floyd Bennett a couple of months ago for a Reba Day. And man, she reminded me of so many of my Puerto Rican aunts, because I'm half Puerto Rican too, in a good way. And she's small. Like she's like the tiniest little thing. I just wanted to squeeze her. But she's tough. You're right. She's tough.
Definitely one tough girl.
Yeah. Transit rescue. And then of course ESU. I think she was in 3 truck for a little bit.
Was she? I thought it was two truck.
2 truck, yeah. She was in 2. Then I know she had finished out in tomato. Yeah.
A lot of people bounced around in different trucks, except for 4 truck. 4 truck was the dump truck. Like, you screwed up, you go to Fort Chuck. Unless you lived upstate, then we requested it.
Right. There you go. Yeah, if you're a Rockland County guy, it makes sense. Or
Yeah,
Green,
no,
makes
absolutely.
sense. I got to ask, getting to when it became official in the spring of '95, you guys had already been working there for 9 months, of course, on loan, like we said. Did that make it easier, at least, when it became official? Hey, you guys are already here. You got a bit of a head start, at least.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely made it easier because, when we first got, quote unquote, on loan, put in the trucks, we're still wearing our housing rescue, uniform.
Right.
Like, you just want to talk about the ugly redheaded stepchild. It's like, yeah, okay, this bring Cinderella to the ball over here and stick baby in the corner. But it was tough. I mean, some guys opened their arms and welcomed you in and said, listen, it is what it is. We got to work with you and let's, make the best of it. Some guys not so much, but they eventually came around, and I wouldn't trade anything in the world for that, those times. And even as difficult it may be in the beginning. I mean, you had some guys that, I obviously went to Fort Truck. You had some guys that were there, a long time, and, they had no issues. They're like, listen, it is what it is. Come on, let's learn it. You're going to be watching my back. I'm going to be watching yours. Might as well. I think some of the worst individuals, and I'll leave them nameless, was the guys who just got to the truck just before you. Like 6 months before you got there, they got there. So they're the FNGs 6 months ago. Now you are. So now it's like, I'm going to be the hairbag now. But that was far and few in between. Right. Most of the guys were great, and they welcomed us.
Mm-hmm. I feel like you worked at ESU during the golden age. I feel like that period was just so awesome because, as Franco and I talked about, you combined all the Yes, Franco Baraducci, and a great story that he told me about him and John Coughlin at an EDP job. I don't know if you were on that one, but we could talk about it later if you were, with the EDP stabbing down at the bunker.
No, I don't think I was on that job.
Yeah, well, it was a great story. Franco told it involved some jars of sauce later that he gave John Coughlin, but as a gift. But that period was great because you combine the knowledge of everything that the transit rescue guys and gals knew. You put it in the NYPD Emergency Service Unit. You combine what you guys knew about the housing projects, put it in ESU. ESU is already a jack of all trades, and you combine what they know as it is into this, this one enclave that made for such a great, once everybody got their footing underneath them, of course, and now became official. I feel like that stretch of 95 to 2000 was probably one of the best, if not the best, in ESU history. Plus, crime was going down. You guys, broken windows. That was a great time to be a cop, period, and a great time to be an E-man, I imagine.
Yes, absolutely. E-man was well respected by patrol. You didn't get your balls broken. They treated you like a gentleman. You showed up on the job, gentleman, gentlewoman, whatever. You showed up on the job, and it's like they stepped back. They said, this is what we got. Let's take care of it. Tie the door off and tell us what you want to do. And unfortunately, it's transformed into, the proverbial too many cooks spoil the soup now. Too many other people get involved, and it's like somebody who's not in the unit, somebody that doesn't have experience, somebody who's not even on the scene is making calls for things that are on the scene that the guys are standing there holding the other end of the door, holding a rope on the other end of the door, and just drawing everything out. Yes, the good old days of, you ran your ass off, you got there, and it's like, all right, the truck, the Adam car is there, the boy car is there. We wait for the truck, and then boom, let's go in. Maybe you get an Adam car from, for us, it was from 3 truck or 2 truck, an extra two bodies. And you made entry and did what you had to do and solve the situation. Done and over with. Those were great times.
Well, I can imagine. And if it was a big job that wasn't a criminal job per se, if it was a rescue job, I say this because he's in the chat and he's been on the show for my FDNY miniseries. He worked at Rescue 3, that's Garrett Lindgren. He got FDNY Rescue 3 there. And most of those guys, listen, you have some in each unit that, are knuckleheads, but as you said earlier, but most of those guys didn't have a problem with you guys and you didn't have a problem with them. You work together, you do great work.
Yeah, listen, it depended on what borough and what truck and what team and what personality. Like you said, some guys got along, some guys didn't. Up in the Bronx, it's like, all right, listen, it's no TV cameras and nobody really cared too much. And it's like, all right, who's first on the scene? You need a hand. No, we're good. Okay, all right, see you later, and vice versa. If we want a scene first, I mean, listen, you get knuckleheads on both sides of the ring, so to speak. So, we definitely didn't have as many issues up in the Bronx.
Yeah, no, I imagine, and it's a borough where you could really kind of fly under the radar. I want to move it along a little bit because I don't want to forget your bomb squad years, of course, which we will chronicle tonight. Of course, this is Tales from the Boom Room, after all. So, a couple of quick notes on ESU before I move into those 12 years you spent with the bomb squad, and that is any guy I get on that was in either 3-truck or 4-truck, I have to ask them this. Yankee Stadium during the 90s, dynasty years, 96 to 01. Of course, great runs to the World Series, 4 out of 5 championships. Any details during the playoffs at Yankee Stadium?
Any details as far as being on details?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you had your sniper team up on the in the rafters there, and then you had your response, interior response, exterior response. It was great. I mean, you can't put a price on that. You're paying me to go inside and keep an eye out on things, but with one eye I'm watching the game, the other eye I'm watching everything else. It was absolutely fantastic. The energy, my son is a diehard Yankee fan and goes there, and it's like he could only imagine, me being there during that dynasty era. And I tell you, it was one funny story is after one of the games, and I think it was against Atlanta, and we had lost the first game, and then we had just lost the second game. I think we came back to win the series.
96.
But, okay, so was that 96?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You're better than I am. My brain is a little shot. But had lost the second game, and, everybody came off their post from emergency. And, we're down sort of outside the elevator area, the press area, and just sort of like, having a little chit chat before we take off and leave. And, there's about 4 or 5 of us in a circle. And elevator door opens up. George Steinbrenner walks out. And he walks right into the middle of our little circle there. And he looks at all of us. And it's like, can any of you pitch? We're laughing our asses off. It's like he was frustrated beyond belief. And it's like, okay, yeah, I can pitch. Come on. Yeah. But it was good. It was definitely a fun time. Definitely a good time.
Yeah.
And hey, you're on the clock too. It's like the best of both worlds.
No, of course. And he was a happy man by next week because go down to Atlanta, of course, win 3 straight. Coney comes through in game 3. They come back from 6 runs down in game 4 and win. And then game 5, Andy Pettitte pitches the best game of his career. Game 6, Jimmy Key closed it out. And, that kicked off a great run of Yankee baseball. And the last note on emergency before we get to 2002 and go into the bomb squad is, how did you, because they call you guys, they call you this specifically, I should say. How I know I can see why they called you Lemonhead. I know Brian Hearn called you Lance, but where did pound for pound softest guy in emergency come from?
Well, yeah, okay. Okay, Steph, you happy? You hear it? Pound for pound, softest man in emergency service. Get that straight.
Uh-huh.
And you know what? I wore that moniker, with pride. I don't give a crap. But in the beginning of my career, it's like you get hurt, you get banged up a little bit, you suck it up. And just keep going to work, and you're going with an injury and you're just limping around or whatever. And then I find out it's like if you get injured, you get a little bit of time off. It's tax, a good tax thing to do at the end of the year also. And I'm like, why am I busting my hump if I pull this or if I break this or scrape this up? I'm gonna take a couple days off here and there, So instead of getting my gold watch or my plaque or my whatever at the end of my career for going 20 years or 28 years without being sick, it's like, all right, I'm gonna go sick every now and then. And I sort of got that pound for pound. Oh, Steve hurt his finger, he got bit by a bee, he got stung by a bee, he's gonna go out. I'm like, I'll take a day off.
I don't blame you. As someone who's been stung by a bee, I don't blame you. I sympathize.
Yeah, they suck.
Yeah, they very much do. So of course that brings us to the spring of 2002, and you go through 9/11. I for those of you that want to hear Steve's experience, I linked it in the description of this video. He talks about it in depth in that video that I linked. 4-truck, of course, loses John and Steve. ESU loses 14. And you go to the bomb squad along with a bunch of other guys, a lot of whom are from emergency as well. Ronnie Richards, Paulie Periclone, I think Glenn Osterman, Joe Dolan had got there the previous summer in June of '01. So heavy emergency presence. And around that time, this is a two-part question, Bomb Squad's going through it too. A lot of guys are retiring. They're trying to come to terms with Danny's loss, and that was a massive loss for them because he was a great detective and a great guy.
He was a cornerstone of the Bomb Squad. You know?
Oh yeah, he was a heart and soul guy for them.
Correct.
Were you thinking about moving on from emergency prior to that day, or did that day make you say, okay, maybe I should go to a different unit? What made you want to go to the Bomb Squad?
Prior to 9/11?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had actually put in to go to the Bomb Squad prior to 9/11.
Okay.
You know, just to get a different experience, a different feel. You know, things had started changing a little bit, and they were busting chops more in emergency, not within the unit itself, but the outside influences, and I sort of saw the writing on the wall. And I'm like, you know what? You know, somebody once told me as a rookie, you know, many years ago. I think he was an old timer. He'd already been retired, and I think I was still in the academy. He goes, kid. He goes, just bounce around. He goes, it'll be like a new job every time you start someplace else. You know, and I guess at the beginning in emergency, you know, strapping on the heavy vest and an MP5 and a helmet and a bunker and standing on the door and waiting to go in and very excited. I was riled up and really excited. And just as time goes on, you get a little bit older, and it's like, you know, you don't have that same excitement. And I felt that if you don't have that excitement, you don't have that oomph that you want to go in and you know, run the rails down into that apartment, then you should step back and let somebody else do it, because it's not a job. If you're going to go half-assed, you can't go half-assed.
Right.
You know, full boat enough, no nothing. So I put in prior to 9/11, but I knew that it was a long shot, and you know, there'd be a waiting list, and you'd have to go through the whole interview process. So, you know, did I think I had a shot to get in? Not really. You know, I had known some guys from Ford Truck, like Tanya Reardon, who had gotten into the Bomb Squad before me, and he's like, you know, why don't you put in? And you know, I'll talk to the boss and tell me you're a good guy in a whole bit, and you know, so I put in. But you know, nothing really happened, and then obviously 9/11 happened, and you know, then it was definitely a reason that I wanted to leave. Not that I wanted to leave emergency, but to me, it was at that point mentally unstable, and you know, going into the truck every single day and seeing a picture of Steve, or seeing a picture of John, or being reminded every single day, and it's just, I found that very, very tough. You know, and I had already put in for the Bomb Squad before, so I was like, you know what, it's writing on the wall. It's signed from above. I'm still here, and my application's still in, and now they actually need people, so I'll take a chance and see how it is.
And I credit so much of the, you know, coming in during that time, the guys that came in 02, 03, especially 02, because a lot of guys came in February of 02, so only a few months after.
That was us.
Yeah, as Jim Carano called you, the Knucklehead Nine.
Knucklehead Nine.
Yeah.
9 people in the Bomb Squad at one time. Newbies. That was unheard of. You get
Right.
one, maybe two, and that was, you know, guys you'd have to pry their dead fingers, you know, off the Bomb Squad truck to get them out for you to get in. So,
right,
you know, unheard of at that point.
Yeah, and that year was such a transitional year. Like I said, at this point, you know, the guys, it's February. Danny hadn't been found yet. They found Danny the next month. Like I said, guys are retiring that had been there a long time. Yeah. And by the end of the year, cornerstone guys who had been there a long time, like Kevin Barry, who'd been there 19 years, he left. Dennis Mulcahy, he left.
Oh, stop it.
Yeah. Great guy. And Jerry Sheehan, who, even though he hadn't been the CO of the Bomb Squad long, he knew about explosives from his time in Arson Explosion in the years he was CO there. Very knowledgeable man, previous guest on this show. He left, and that's when Mark came in. So that 02, 03, where it's a swirl constantly, and you're still trying to learn the ropes.
Right.
Who helped you learn, and who kind of helped you guys steady the path?
As far as in the Bomb Squad, I mean, a lot of the senior guys. You know, Mr. Mulcahy was hands down, you know, phenomenal. You know, it's one of the things he you know, with his Irish brogue is about, you know, reading X-rays. If you don't know what's in the package, how are you going to take care of the job? You know, and you know, that sort of came to heart. It's like, hey, this guy knows, he's been here this long. He's been through all this crap. He knows what he's talking about. Follow him,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And just a whole bunch of the old timers before they left. You know, they were very open and very said, you know, this is what you got to do every day. This is what you got to do, and practice, because nothing might happen, you know, for a long time, but you got to be ready and prepared.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to sit there and sort of slack off and not be on top of your game.
Oh, of course. You know, Dennis has a line, and it wasn't said on this show. I've been trying to get Dennis on the program forever. He's just so busy with so many different things. But he said it in the documentary they did on him, which is, if you cut the right wire, you'll hear it. If you cut the wrong wire, you're never going to hear it. And
Nope.
that line has stuck with me to this day, since I heard it a number of years back from him. And it's dead on the money. And, you know, it's still, even though he had a lot of retirements, a guy like Dan McNally there is, for example, 15 years in the bomb squad. You lean on him a little bit. Jimmy Carano, who I mentioned earlier, he's got 10 years in the bomb squad. Even somebody like Brian Hearn or Jeff Oberdeer, who you remember from Housing as well, 7 years. Jerry Fitzpatrick, same thing. So there were guys at least that were willing to share with you, and that has to make the transition easier, so that when you go to Huntsville, you're still nervous, I imagine, but you're not as nervous.
Yeah, no. I think that the guys from the NYPD bomb squad were by far the most prepared when we went down to Huntsville, because we were already deep into it, and they were doing a lot of training, and you know, and Fitz and Obi and Buckowitz and you know, Carano. You know, all these guys were doing training. You know, Brian Hearn doing training up the range before we even got down to Huntsville, which was definitely helpful, because now we didn't go down there, you know, looking like deer in the headlights. We sort of had a definite head start, you know, which was great. It was definitely helpful, and they you know, they knew that we got a little push before we got down there. So they would ride us even harder in Huntsville, expecting us. You New Yorkers, you got to know what you got to do. You know, with the southern drawl accent, Lloyd Pirtle.
Yeah, no, it's great training, because it encompasses military down there too. So it's a wide range there down at the Arsenal, and it's helpful for sure for any bomb tech, no matter where they're coming from, but especially, of course, New York City, with how expansive the city is and how old the bomb squad is. It's the oldest in the country. And on that note, 2003, and this is again another interesting period. After 9/11, calls are going up because there's a certain element, understandably, of paranoia after that terrible.
Yeah.
You know,
start
people
seeing
are
ghosts.
Exactly. And on top of that, bomb squads turn in the 100. And you got the details. You have, of course, New Year's Eve. You have the tree lighting. You have the New York City Marathon. Do you recall, once you were certified as a bomb technician out of Huntsville, your first package?
Yeah, you know, my first package was actually, I was clueless. One of the things in Huntsville, and it was very limited. I mean, I don't know if it's changed or not, but very limited on military ordnance, just because there's a myriad, there's so much to know. So they can't spend weeks on that, like in a normal EOD unit. And we didn't, so we're not supposed to come into contact with that many, you know, that much ordnance being in New York City. Happens to be my first job was a large military shell that was brought to the precinct, and they freaked out, and they brought it out into the back parking lot, emergency, and then they called the bomb squad. We showed up, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, kid, first job, get in a suit. And I'm like, okay, let's go. You know, started taking X-rays, and then, you know, thank God it's like you had Hearn and Brian Coughlin there. I'm like, you know, still tutoring you along, even though you were certified now. But being certified does not mean you know everything. Obviously, every day is going to be a learning experience, and that was another learning experience. And you know, everything worked out well, and it turned out to be, you know, nothing to be concerned with. It wasn't a live shell, which was good. But that was, you know, first shot, a little terrifying, I guess. I don't know, terrifying, but you know, awakening, so to speak.
Yeah. And especially, and I guess it helped, and of course we wished it. The circumstances weren't so at the time, but times being what they were, I guess it helped that, you know, repetition eventually leads to honing of the craft. You're getting called for so many packages, you're clearing so many packages during that 2002 to 2003 period. Eventually, Correct. Even though you never know everything in the bomb squad, there is a level of comfort that sets in, I imagine, right?
Yes, you definitely get more comfortable, and a big part of that is being able to read and diagnose images and the X-rays. So you go down there and what's the situation and who put the package there and how long has it been there and has it been touched, whatever. So you gather around you gather up all the evidence, and then you go down and take the picture. And then now between knowing that and the picture, now you feel not 100%. You should never be 100%, but you feel very, very comfortable in opening it at that point. Yes, the repetition, the more you do it, definitely, the better you're going to get at it. It becomes second nature and muscle memory. To do the right thing. As long as you were paying attention to the guys that trained you before you went to Huntsville, and after you got back, you still listen to the senior guys that have been there, and you start learning and you start feeling more comfortable. And you start getting better, and it's craft your trait.
No, of course, and and that it helps when you have the good thing about the bomb squad is that it doesn't sound good on the surface, but it is when you explain it in context. You guys are very small. There's about between 30 and 40 of you. The exact number isn't known for security reasons, and rightfully so. But
Right.
that's about the ballpark estimate of the bomb squad. And they cover the whole city for those of you in the chat that may not be aware, although most of you are, of course. But the good thing about it is that the smaller amount of people, the more time you can take to train somebody and get them up to speed. Because in larger units, it's a little bit harder. People might get overlooked.
Closer unit, closer family. You guys are constantly working together and watching each other. And somebody does something right, everybody watches. And hey, that's great. That was a great idea. Let's do that next time. Somebody does something not so right. It's like, hey, you know what? You could have done this a little bit better.
Right.
So yeah, definitely the training was good, and the fact that it's a smaller unit is good. But being a smaller unit or not, we have Nassau, we have Suffolk, we have Westchester. Like during 9/11 and during the RNC and DNC, whatever, we had assistance from them just because there are so many things going on.
Right.
So we never let anybody know the true number of who's covering and what they're doing.
No, of course you got to stay one step ahead of the enemy. And I know teams in the bomb squad shift around a lot depending on people coming in, people retiring. When you finally got settled in, who was in your team?
Well, it settled in the beginning. I was on the A team. It was me. It was Brian Hearn. It was Billy Popper and Mike Clappell.
Okay.
So that was the A team. That was the initial start. And then guys leave and who retires, and a new guy comes in, and they have to just flip people around, and so it did quite a bit of moving, which was good. You work with some people and you work with some other people. It's definitely good not to get too comfortable. Because it's like you spend so many hours with people, it becomes like a marriage. It's like you need a little space. You don't want to be on top of the same person 24/7, because I don't care how much you love them. You need to move around a little bit. And I think it was good. And I was very, very happy. And I worked with a ton of great people.
Right.
Billy Neese and John Cousins and Jimmy Shutter and Joe Trancho and Mr. Brady, Timmy Brady. It was great. It was great switching around and moving around, and different stories, learn about different people. That's a nice thing. Mr.
O'Mixon.
How could I forget Michael O'Mixon? He was my last team leader before I became a team leader. So yes, Michael, I hope he's doing well. He's down in Florida. You could go visit him when you're done with the Connecticut.
I thought he was still in Staten Island. No, he moved down to Florida.
I think he's down in Florida. Well, maybe.
Maybe he's doing the snowbird thing.
It could be.
Yeah, it could be. It makes sense. Makes sense.
If he's down there, he's sweating right now.
There's a funny little story, and what was a not funny day, but this moment was at least a little lighthearted. As you know, Mike had a very close call himself on 9/11, and Tom McHale, who's a good friend of his from the Port Authority Police Joint Terrorism Task Force, was on this show. And he was talking to a mutual friend of theirs. I guess they called Mike Sluggo. And they're standing next to, I think, an emergency service REP. And they're like, oh, man, I don't think Sluggo made it. And Mike's on the other side of the REP, dusts himself off. He's like, no, I'm okay.
I'm still here. Sluggo. Yeah, I think that was he got that in the 6th precinct more so, I think, than in the bomb squad, because he was a Sluggo before we even got there. He looks like
yeah.
a very good dog, Mike.
Yeah, very great guy, great guy. I wanted to get him on the show. He's a low key guy, and that's totally fine. But man, if I could ever get him on one day, if he changes his mind, I think that'd be a very, very good interview.
Come on, Mike.
Yeah, there you go. I got Lanoce pitching for me. So that said, the thing that people may not understand about the bomb squad in New York City is that when you think about bombs, generally speaking, you think automatically terrorism. And that's not always the case, because as we've covered before, gangsters trying to get back at each other, drug dealers trying to get back at each other, even jilted lovers, believe it or not, trying to get back at each other, or somebody that might want to commit some insurance fraud. Hey, why don't I just blow up my apartment building and boom, I can collect the money. So when you're handling different devices, don't give me the tricks of the trade. I don't want that. We got to keep that secret. But each device is different. So give me a general overview. Okay, we have a car bomb, we have a pipe bomb. How is that handled without going into too much detail?
Without going into too much detail, I mean, it's the situation, where it is, what you're told it is. And that doesn't necessarily mean that's what it is. You could be told it's a pipe, turns out to be a grenade. You could be told it's a grenade, it turned out to be stick of dynamite. Whatever the case may be, you just go into it with an open mind and safe mind, and just calmly. That was our whole thing. And one of the things that we were told by a lot of the senior guys when we got to the bomb squad is, listen, some of you guys come from emergency, and emergency is like a whole different mindset. Emergency is, gangbusters. We're going in there, and we're taking the door, and we're taking control of the situation now, and then you transition to the bomb squad, and it's like, okay, everybody's there, everything's in place. There's for the most part. I mean, there have been situations where they, I think it was up in the Bronx years ago where they had an EDP. And allegedly had wiring all connected to his body, and I think he had some almost like mini pipe bombs, crickets they call them. But and the precinct's holding them down. That was the one scenario, one situation where it's like you got to run like a bat out of hell to get there, and because you don't want a cop to get hurt or get blown up because you're taking your sweet ass time. But in general, it's you take your time. Assess the whole situation, devise the plan, and then you hope that your plan is good, depending on who it is, what device it is, and then just get your ass out of there and home in one piece.
I don't know if it's the same job, but Mixon in an interview he did mentioned a job like that in the Bronx where a guy,
Co-op City.
Yep. So there you go. It was that job then. This is like 2002-ish, 2003-ish, I believe, that he mentioned when that job took place. Around the time the bomb squad turned 100, that's when Richie Esposito, another former guest of the show, came in and chronicled you guys. And he picked the fact.
Don't forget Teddy.
Ted Gerstein, too. Ted Gerstein as well. Yep. I shouldn't forget him. Thank you for pointing him out. And did the book. And it's an interesting time. You just turned 100. You're still coming off the heels of 9/11. But what I love about that book is that it went back in time and it focused on the present time, the day-to-day as it was in 2004, but also back to 1993, back to the 70s. Being a new guy at the time, and I remember Paulie Perricone mentioning that, he didn't like the idea at first, and neither did Jeff Oberdeer, but with time, Rich earned you guys' trust, and the book came out great. What was your feelings when him and Ted came in to do that project? Were you for it? Were you against it?
Well, listen, it's like when it comes to, reporters and media and things like that, you always hold a little bit close to the heart, because it's, right. In this day and age, everything can be twisted and then misconstrued, and you take bits and pieces and make somebody look like an idiot. So yeah, a lot of guys were definitely not thrilled and happy when they first came in, but they sort of earned a little bit of our trust, and they said, listen, we will not embarrass you, we will not say anything and do anything that'll get anybody hurt, give away trade secrets, or do anything that's going to go out there. And it's like, all right, here's a manual on how to defeat the NYPD bomb squad. So they sort of earned our trust, and they were good. They spent a long time with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
know?
Yeah, it was a good while. And that book, I told Rich on the show, and I thanked him for this, and he was a great guest. That book helped me learn about more guys. Some guys I already knew about because they were on LinkedIn, they were on Facebook. But the guys like yourself in that book, that I found out about you because of that book. So really, Tales from the Boom Room was able to take on the life that it has because of me reading that book. And I got it as a college graduation gift because I'd always wanted to read it. So I gave Rich a big thank you because, quite frankly, had it not been for that book, I don't know if we're having this conversation right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if we ever cross paths.
No, it's good. It's good to leave a little bit of a legacy and just keep knowledge and information going. As long as it's not too much.
No, of course. Quick little shout out. I see them in the chat throwing our inside jokes in there. My buddy Jason Palma, my buddy Kevin Ramirez, who are my gym brothers, couldn't tag along to the workout tonight because of the podcast. I'll see you guys Monday. We'll get our pump in. But thanks, guys, for tuning into the stream.
Pump you up.
Yeah, the good old. I like to lift things up and put them down.
Yes,
that's us hitting it as
I'll
hard.
give my shout out to Franco Berarducci for that one.
Ah, there you go. And Franco, when I had him on the show, granted, I only saw him from chest up. He still looks like he's in good shape, man.
What way to the beach?
Down in Cape May, enjoying his retirement after working
I loved Emergency when Bobby and Franco would just go at it like the honeymooners, just back and forth, and Franco would bust Bobby's chops and vice versa. It was hilarious just to sit there and watch that whole act. It was like vaudeville in the truck.
Yeah, that's what guys tell me about. Similarly, in the Bomb Squad that worked with both Stevie Burbridge and Danny Richards, that watching those two go back and forth in the office, same thing. It was a pure comedy act. There's just partnerships like that. Opposites attract. That's the old saying, and that was certainly the case. A quick job I wanted to ask you about. Minor job in the grand scheme of things, and then I'll get to your time as a team leader. But there was an explosion outside the British consulate in 2005.
Okay.
Again, it's a kind of a minor job. I know Brian Coughlin handled it. Were you on that job at all or no?
No.
Okay.
No, if you're not working or if your team's not up, you're not going to be on it. But yes, it was sort of a crude. It was almost annoying that the NYPD gave a press release and sort of described the device.
Copycats.
Too much in depth of what happened and how it happened and what they did. It's like, you know what? There was a device. End of story. All right. You don't need to know. And that's it. Because now, yeah, exactly. Now you start getting copycats and, oh, it's that easy. Oh, I could do that too. Oh, yeah. It's like, yeah, that's, keep your mouth shut.
Exactly. Because again, it's kind of what you said earlier. What the book was not, that press release is, which could be a manual on how to run up the NYPD bomb squad.
It's on a need-to-know basis, and you give them the general idea of what happened. And yes, it was a device, and leave it at that. Don't describe it. Don't say how they made it. Don't say what was in it. It's not for anybody to know.
No, I'm not laughing at that. I'm laughing at this in the chat. Greg Picture, who's a big supporter of the show, retired fireman out of the city of Detroit, says Steve is a spitting image of Dustin Hoffman.
Oh, Dustin Hoffman.
There you go. There's a compliment. Thank you, Greg. I think it made Steve's year. You might have even made his decade with that. So thank you, Greg. He's quite grateful for that. And you had two jobs in Times Square around this time. 2008, a minor device goes off. And this was during campaign season, so it got a little traction that way. It was like a minor thing that somebody left, I think, near the police station in Times Square. And it was like a pressure cooker type thing. Didn't do much damage, thankfully. And then you get 2010. Now, I don't know if you were working that night. I know Greg Abate was for that job. But even if you weren't, again, without going... Yeah, another good one gone too soon. But with that job, where New York City came very close to experiencing something catastrophic. Tell me about, I guess, even if you weren't there that night, and again, don't go into too much detail, just the surface level, the debrief. Car bomb, inches. Had he knew what he was doing, if it was a Ramzi Youssef type building that bomb, it could have been a disaster.
We were all very thankful that this idiot, EDP, psycho, terrorist, whatever you want to call him.
All the above.
If he did go to some sort of terrorist class, well, he was hung over and he was sleeping in the back of the room. He didn't pay attention. because he did things wrong, which was good for us. Put things together wrong, which was good for us. Didn't have the right items, was good for us. Cheaped out on certain items, good for us. So it was a win situation on our side because he wasn't top level on his game, which, thank God. I mean, imagine that if he did it right and you have Times Square, and it would have been another 9/11 type situation where it's like, you have multiple, amounts of death and carnage, in that area. And who knows if it takes a building down like in Oklahoma City, and, how big the device could have been. Yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah, no, and there's a great picture of Greg. I think Mayor Bloomberg shaking his hand, Ray Clare's hand as well. They had a hand in that job. Jay Halleck, I think, might have been on that job, and he had a few years in the bomb squad by the point. Still in the bomb squad. A guy that when he retires, I definitely want to get him on so he could talk about his career.
Speaking of Mayor Bloomberg, he still owes me $30.
Why? I got to hear the story on this. Why is that?
Well, it's where the Giants had just won the Super Bowl, and we did a sweep, of the whole bunch of units. I had my dog there, Duke. We did sweeps of the parade route, and we were positioned. Me and I don't know who I was working with that day, at the beginning of the parade. So they were coming out of wherever they were coming out of, down in Lower Manhattan, and a bunch of the Giants players and Mayor Bloomberg, and he walks by and, hey, good morning, Mr. Mayor, and he looks over, hey, good morning, and he's like, I like that shirt, and I had the Bomb Squad polo shirt on. And I said, oh, I could get you one. What size? He goes, and he looks over his shoulder, and it's like, a medium. So I was like, okay. So get to City Hall like a week later or something with a medium Bomb Squad shirt. I drop it off, and it's like, to this day, still waiting. $30.
I don't know if he could afford it,
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? He's only got that little itty bitty TV network, so who knows if he can if he can afford it.
$30 with interest over the past. When did the Giants last win the
2012.
2012. So 11 years.
11 years.
11 years of interest. Got to pay the vig.
Exactly. And I was gonna say you had 3 parades. You had both times they won against the Patriots. Correct. And then you had 2009 with the Yankees too.
Yes.
Which was also fun.
I tell you, one of the nicest. I don't want to say fun because I was working, but it really was fun. Was the All-Star game?
Oh, right, yeah.
New York City, that they had at Yankee Stadium, and they had all the old timers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I got a picture with Hank Aaron that day. Jay Halleck, who was my partner at the time, got a picture with Derek Jeter. Got a picture with Penny Marshall. It was just meeting all these greats, depending on where you were set in that parade route, the beginning, the end, whatever. And it was just, I'm like, this is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Once in a lifetime experience.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. And I remember watching that game because that was the last year of the old Yankee Stadium, which they should have never torn down.
Yes.
I missed that ballpark. I even miss Shea Stadium. I hate when they tear down the vintage ballparks. But yeah, that ended up being a great game too. I think it went into extra innings, so you got overtime that night because I think the AL won on like a walk-off sac fly, if I recall correctly. That game was it's one of the more underrated All-Star games. Very great night. And then you had the home run derby too, that which you might have been at when Josh Hamilton was going berserk.
No, I wasn't.
You missed that.
But I remember that. It was like 27 or something like that.
And he still lost. I think Morneau won it. Justin Morneau. That's when there were rumors of Hamilton potentially going to the Yankees. A couple more things that I don't want to keep you too long that I wanted to touch on. I will get to your time as a team leader. You were in a video game. Bomb Squad New York.
You know what? Go ahead, Steph. You're enjoying yourself?
No, that's not a Steph question. That's a me question.
Oh, okay.
That's a me question. It was like 2009. Right.
Before we get into that, let me just bust my own chops again, and this just because I think it's funny.
Yeah.
We had gotten a call in the Bomb Squad office, and I happened to be there, and it was like a writer for Law and Order, and they were doing the pizza bomber, where they put a neck bomb around the individual, and it ended up going off. So they wanted to do a show based on that whole premise, that whole incident.
Right.
So this writer was like, listen, would you be willing to talk to me just a little bit, just so we could give it some sort of reality? He goes, listen, I don't want to know, what you guys do and how you guys do it, but just sort of some sort of reality, to give it to the show. And I go, all right, yeah, no problem. And, spoke to him for a little while, and he was very, very thankful. He's like, listen, if it's anything, that I could do for you. I said, well, I do have my SAG card. I go, can you get me a read to maybe get on the show? He goes, yeah, I could do that. So long story short, a few months go by, and I get a call from Law and Order, and it's like, all right, listen, we got a spot as the bomb squad commander. So, oh, that's pretty legit. Okay. So I go down there. I'm wearing my uniform because I'm actually going into work that day. I just went there a little bit early. And I show up and I sit down, and producers, director, whatever, and they're like, where did you get that outfit? Did you go to, dressing? What do they call that? When they give you the outfit?
Party City?
No. I'm talking for TV shows.
Ah, right. I think I know what you're talking
props,
about.
And
I know what you're talking about.
Anyway,
Yeah.
where you get all the clothing
Right.
from the shows. And like, where did you get that? And I said, this is mine. I'm actually going into work. I go, oh, you're really in a bomb squad? I go, yeah. So, okay. So I read the lines, which I knew. And, oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And went into work and never heard anything back. And somebody found out about it. And that's all I needed to hear. Wardrobe. Thank you.
Thanks, Billy.
Wardrobe. It's a brain fart.
Yeah.
So anyway, somebody found out, and they're like, look at this guy. He can't even play a bomb tech on TV. It's like, you're not a real bomb tech. You can't even play one on TV. It's like, you just got totally shot down.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm sorry. You asked about.
I'll get to the video game. I wasn't laughing. When you said the pizza bomber, I wasn't laughing at that. That's not funny. I'm laughing because I think back on it, and Jeff Oberdeer was actually in an episode of Law and Order. And not as a bomb tech, in a separate role. So I was laughing because I was thinking back to that episode, because I'm a huge Law and Order fanatic. And this was, even though the post Jerry Orbach episodes, not so much, because I loved Lenny Briscoe and Jerry Orbach's my favorite actor ever. That episode where it was dealing with the terrorist angle, ironically, Jeff was in it as like some store clerk. So I was laughing thinking back on that episode. But
didn't Jeff get residuals for saying it's all clear or something like that?
I hope he did.
In the background, it's all clear, and it's like he's still getting residuals. A few bucks a year maybe.
Wait, how did you get a SAG card?
How did I?
Yeah.
Well, just by going to enough of these shows. And eventually it's like, okay, you've been on enough shows as a non-SAG member. Now you have to join. Which is kind of expensive, but it's like, all right, we'll do what we got to do and join and get your SAG card. And you sort of get in, more often. And they're looking for, I think a lot of these shows would rather have a real cop play a cop than have an actor play a cop, because they don't need to train a real cop how to play. I mean, you walk, you talk, the way you maneuver, the way you guys in emergency, how you do entry on a room. You don't have to train them and do that. And it's funny, you go on a set and sometimes, they'll have somebody who's an actor that's there, and you right away, everyone's looking him up and down. It's like, he's not on a job. He's just snuck in for the day.
Yeah.
But it was fun.
Yeah.
Sort of, I'm out of that game now.
Well, yeah, you have your star on the Walk of Fame.
Yeah.
You hit the big time, So, but that video game too, I never played it. I might have to track it down to see if it exists, because I'm getting old games from my PS3. I think it was a PC game though. Yes. Bomb Squad New York. It's like 2009. You're still on the job. Did you have to jump through a lot of hoops with DCPI to get that approved?
Well, basically, they couldn't use the typical patch, the NYPD patch. Mm-hmm. So they could just write New York Police and sort of make it a little bit different. Yeah, but it wasn't a game. It's like a first-person shooter game. It was more of the, find hidden objects, and that leads you to another area, and it was all based on me and my canine Duke. Finding different objects, and it was more of that type of a game than a shoot 'em up. But it was an old friend of mine that I grew up with as a child, who ended up moving down to North Carolina, And somehow he found me, he looked me up, and it's like, he's very, very interested. And, he has this company that produces these types of games. And he said, would you be willing to do it? I'm like, okay, why not?
Sure.
Sound like fun. It's like, come on down, we'll pay for your flight, we'll pay for your meals, stay at a hotel. And it's okay, come down for a couple days. And, it was basically a lot of voiceovers. If they found objects and you do this and you move on to that. And it went well and they were very happy with it. But I think that his company it got bought over by Disney or by a bigger company, and they wanted nothing to do with anything that said bomb in it or anything that had any sort of violence in it. And they sort of just pushed it to the side. I mean, I think I still have a poster from like the coming of the game.
Right.
It's not of me. It's Duke the dog that's on the game. But it was pretty cool. It was fun. When I was down there, they said, listen, since you're down here and, you already did yours, would you be willing to do a voiceover for like a mafia style game? It's like, you have that New York Bronx accent. Hey, how you doing? Well, hey, I'm coming to look for you now. So that was a load of fun. That was great.
I can imagine. Before I get to, we got Stevie Lanoce here.
2-3 minutes. I'll be right back.
There you go. Before I get to when you called it a day, just as I promised, talking about your time as a team leader, it's an interesting evolution, right? You get into the bomb squad. You got a lot of time on the job between housing and the NYPD, but you learn. You're kind of a rookie all over again, learning the.
You're the FNG all over.
Right. You learn that. You work through that. You get some seniority, and now you're in a position where, wow, you know what? I can train other guys. This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Being a team leader, how much of that role? How rewarding was that role? And give me a little bit of how you would teach these newer guys coming in.
But I mean, it was rewarding or not. Team leader meant more when we first got in because the sergeants weren't working around the clock, and I think they worked up until like 2300, and then the next sergeant came in at 0700. So the whole overnight, there was no boss at that point. So if something happened, the team leader was the boss. So by the time I became team leader, the bosses were working 24/7 with us. So it was more of a leadership role, like you said, and the new guys coming in, and I mean it was nice. It was fun. And some of the best compliments I got were, and again, it's guys coming into the bomb squad. They're not rookies. They're not brand new on the job. They've been there for a while, been on the job for a while. And I still remember at my retirement party, Steve Sansone had sent me a text. He couldn't come, he couldn't make it or whatever. And he goes, thank you so much for always treating me well and treating me, not like a new guy, but as an equal and still being able to learn things. So I felt good that, I didn't downplay any guys and you're the new guy and, you don't know anything. It's like, no, treat them a little bit more on your level. And I think speaking to them, they'll learn just as much as opposed to speaking down. Where, guys, team leaders just, didn't talk down just because you're a new guy. When I got there, like I said, it was 16 years on the job. And I was at the, I was like 3 from the bottom as far as seniority, or 4 from the bottom. And then I worked my way up, and I think I left. I was like number 2 in seniority, which is pretty good, pretty cool. Not number 1, number 2.
Hey, Derek Jeter was number 2. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, there you go.
When did you know it was time to go?
Just once again, your body starts, getting aches and pains. You start getting old. You hit that 50 mark. Putting on the bomb suit when I first got in, exciting, fresh, couldn't wait for it. And then putting it on when you're 50 plus and it's hot and you're sweating. It's like, and you the next day it's like you feel like you got beat up. So it's it comes a point in time. It's like, all right, listen, again, newer guys coming in, fresh blood. You got to know when to just step off and step away and leave on a good note. Don't stay there until you're unwelcomed. Till, guys will be like, I never wanted to have a guy go, why doesn't he leave already? Why he should get out of here. He should retire. That's not what I wanted. And the job at JFK and a lot of the guys and God rest his soul, Louis Alvarez was like, well, why don't you come out to JFK and do the TSA thing with us? It's a great bunch of guys out here. It's like, bomb squad retirement home. You're still in the game, but you're not in the game. It's like, it's not as physical. It's more mental. And, thank God he sort of pushed me in that direction. I said, all right, you know what? It's time to move on to another chapter.
When you look back, it's strictly not talking about JFK, but just the housing police / NYPD years. Patrol, of course, in the South Bronx, emergency rescue and housing, ESU, bomb squad. You did a lot. It's definitely a career of significance. It's definitely a career to be proud of. When you look back, if you had to define it in a sentence, how would you define essentially half a lifetime of police work?
Lucky. I mean, I experienced the best, experienced the worst, just had a full myriad of, 360 degrees of everything. Great times, horrible times, which I think is part of life. It's like if everything is rosy all the time, you don't know what life is all about. You got to experience some of the crap too. I think it's a full circle of everything, and I'm happy that I ended up where I ended up, and I go to high school reunions, and it's like doctors and lawyers and scientists, and you work for NASA and everything like that, and they want to hear all the stories of what you've done, in the police department and in New York, and where'd you go and who'd you meet, and what'd you do and what'd you see, so I think it was a very lucky, happy, great career. Thank God I was able to make it out, and I'm still here, still knocking.
There you go. And that note, we can go on over to the final segment of the show. It's the rapid fire. 5 hit and run questions from me, 5 hit and run answers from you. If you don't have an answer, you can say pass. That's A-OK. You ready?
Ready.
All right. First,
the word association. You say a word, I say a word.
No. I shoot a question, you fire an answer, and that is the first one, at least of the 5. Funniest call you ever responded to.
Funniest call. Well, I don't know if this is a funny call. It's a sick call. I thought it was after the whole call was done. I thought it was hilarious.
Go ahead.
In Ford truck, we get called to Bronx Central booking for an EDP in the cell, and it was me and Bobby Steinman, and Derek Dunstan was like the senior guy, and it was his job. And I guess the EDP in the cell by himself had just seen Rambo. And you remember the scene in Rambo where he's hidden in like the marsh or the muck, and he's covered in mud, and you just and he just sees his eyes.
I know where this is going.
You know where this is going?
Uh-huh.
So this guy's in the cell, and he decided to defecate all over the cell and scoop it all up and smush it all over his body and act like he's Rambo.
Okay.
And it's like now they go, hey, here's your job. You got to get him out, and you got to get him to the hospital. And it's just. I remember Derek Dunstan just having some words with him, and during the time you're like, oh my God, what are you gonna do? But we ended up with like a hose and like a push broom from the floor and like hosing him down and drying him off, and and it all done. Everything was fine. Everything was good. We got into the hospital, but we were laughing our asses off for a while on that one.
I can imagine. If I'm going to answer a job like that, I'm wearing a hazmat suit. I'm getting a 20-foot pole, and then I'll consider going in there. I mean, then again, in ESU, you don't have much of an option. Get some equipment, but you got to corral them. You got to bring them in. And on that note, second most uplifting call you ever responded to, from poop to
from uplifting call. I don't know. I mean, uplifting call, delivering a baby. Nice. As a rookie with like a year or two on the job, and I was with, Gary Pico, and, he wanted nothing to do with it. And it was a young girl, and, mother was there, and the baby's coming. I'm like, oh no, close your legs, the ambulance will be here in a minute. And it's like, no, it's coming now. It's coming now. And it's like, delivering a life into this world is pretty wild. It's pretty uplifting.
There you go. That's awesome.
It's good.
That's awesome. And that reminds me of a frequent viewer of the show. He couldn't be here tonight, but I promised I'd shout him out because he asked that question. That's a little inside joke. Joe Maliga, who's a retired correctional officer up in Rochester, New York. Shout out to him and his better half, Dawn Gonzalez, who could not make the show tonight. Joe always asked that question in the chat. Did you ever deliver any babies if it's a PD or an FD guest? And so there you go, Joe. He did. Third, favorite tool on the ESU truck. And you can't say hearse because everyone says that.
No. You know what? Dog darts.
Really?
I just enjoyed it. I was like, I don't know, for some reason I was really good. Maybe I played too many video games as a kid, following a light around. But in the Bronx, at that point when I was in ESU, it was like the pit bulls and the dogs, they were just running wild throughout the city. Plus we're up in the north end of the city, so we had the raccoon jobs and possum jobs and stuff. And I don't know. To me, it was just fun. It was like you're getting a dog off the street so it doesn't get cruelly killed or run over a hit. It's not that you want to dart it, but all right, listen. And I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed loading it up, getting the darts in there. It was a little bit of a pain in the ass in the beginning. We had to load. They were like reusable. So we had to reload them and clean them out. And sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't. And then we got to the disposable ones, which were a lot easier, but it was fun. So it's something other than the hearse tool.
There you go. And it's a unique one. It brings back something that Dave Brink talked about, where it was a job he was on in 3 truck, where I forget who he was with. I have to go back to the episode and hear the story, but a dog was hit with the dart in a certain area that, if for all the guys out there, the area I'm talking about, it's not comfortable to get hit there, period. Yeah. So there were some stories with the dog dart, but thankfully that dog was okay. And listen, puts him to sleep for a little bit. Like you said, saves him from a cruel death. And they wake up, hey, what happened? And they're in a shelter, maybe in a better home. It works out for everybody in the end. Works
Absolutely.
Out for sure. And that brings us to the 4th question of the 5. Favorite bar or restaurant in New York City? And you can say multiple. You don't have to pick one.
Oh, I couldn't pick one. I mean, it's just different points in my career. Started out in housing in the South Bronx. It was definitely the Log Cabin, which was like a little hole in a wall bar on a horrible street. And we go in and we just take over. And it's just the whole of PSA 7. And, we just had wonderful, wonderful times. And it was a lot of fun, a lot of craziness. I got to mention Casey's up in the Bronx. This is where I met my wife, who worked up in PSA 8 at the time. I think the Log Cabin was closed, and there's really no other place to go out in the South Bronx. So we ended up going up to Casey's up on Tremont Avenue, and that was PSA 8's bar. So we sort of wandered our way in, or like, what are you guys invading our space? And I ended up meeting my wife that night, which is nice. Shout out.
There you go.
I'm sucking up, honey. At Pauline, truck 4, Pauline's, right next door to the truck. That was great. You didn't have far to go. You don't have to worry about moving your car, parking car. It's like you're done. And if you overdid it, you could go right back to the truck and hang out there for a while. And I guess Whitehorse down for the bomb squad. That was great. A lot of fun. Different areas back and forth, and guys just within walking distance, which was fantastic.
Yeah, and it's Greenwich Village too, so there's a wide variety to choose from in an area like that one. And the 5th and final question, let's say you get when we kind of talked about it earlier in terms of being a team leader, but we can expand on it here for the final question, the rapid fire. Fresh bomb tech, he's just been certified or she's just been certified out of Huntsville or coming into the NYPD bomb squad. Knowing what you know from your years on both sides of the coin, being an E-man responding to these jobs and then being in the bomb squad itself, if you can give that new tech some advice, what would you tell him?
Well, listen, first of all, pay attention in Huntsville. And, one of the instructors was, his line was, don't be a dumbass, just think about what you're doing. And my advice would be think outside the box. Always think outside the box. Don't always think about the straightest line to get to where you want to go. Sometimes it's a big crooked circle, edges all along the outside. You know, I mean, you never know what they expect you to do, so you want to do something that's totally unexpected.
There you go.
That would be advice for a new guy coming in. God bless.
Tough job.
Any guys coming on right now, God bless them all.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Before we say goodbye, and stick around, we'll say goodbye off the air. Before we say goodbye to the audience, thanks for tuning in tonight, guys. I appreciate it. I see you, Scott. Good to see you, buddy. Thanks for tuning in. Any shout outs to anyone or anything that you'd like to give?
Shout outs to everybody in the bomb squad, everybody in emergency, everybody in Ford truck, my 14 boys that we lost that day. I wear them on my wrist proudly every single day of my life. And I will continue to wear this until it's my time. You know, but it's too many names to shout out to all of them.
Oh yeah. Shout out to all of them indeed. And coming up next on the Mike the New Haven podcast, and thanks Steve for being here tonight. Like I said, stick around. We'll say goodbye off the air. A couple of interesting shows. Tuesday, you worked with him. You were in the bomb squad for most of his run in ESU, but he was an E-man for a while. You probably saw him on a lot of jobs. Later finished out his career as an instructor at Floyd Bennett, but he's doing great things in the private sector now because he owns Flying Aces, which is a great consulting company. Andy Burchett, who is also a medic in the emergency service unit, will be here for another volume of the E-Men inside the NYPD's emergency service unit. And then next Friday, this is an interesting show. I've been meaning to get him on for a while too. He started out as a cop, did 8 years as a cop, rolled over to the FDNY, and ended up working in the hazmat team for the New York City Fire Department. That's going to be Paul Rogers. And that'll be volume 38 of the best, the bravest interviews with the FDNY's elite. So some interesting shows coming up. Andy on Tuesday, like I said, for the E-Men inside the NYPD's emergency service unit. In the meantime, this has been volume 34 of Tales from the Boom Room, profiles of the NYPD's Arson and Explosion Squad. And on behalf of retired NYPD Bomb Squad Detective Steve Lanoce, I'm Mike Colón. We will see you next time and have a great rest of your night and weekend, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.